The safety is off. There's a round in the chamber. This is Armed Alabama. Sponsored by McCoy Outdoor Company, Mobile's hometown full-line outdoor sporting products and gear store. An interactive talk show discussing self-defense, product reviews, shooting tips, safety, and more. Your calls, comments, and texts welcome at 343-0106. Now, here are your hosts, retired judge and certified NRA instructor Rusty Johnston and certified NRA law enforcement instructor Adam Strange.
Where the city lights don't shine, I live my life the simple way, and you know I'm doing just fine. I fish, I hunt, and I shoot my guns, and I raise a little hell. The things I do, you know I do them well. This is my America, and I'm so proud. I don't mind, I say it loud. This is my America, God bless America, land of the free, because of the brave. This is my America.
Good evening. This is Judge Rusty Johnston, and welcome to the Armed Alabama Show. This is Honest Abe's birthday, Abraham Lincoln, February 12th. Can't recall the year. We'll talk maybe a little about him in a minute. Adam Strange is off tonight. We got Will Case with us with Friends of the NRA. How are you tonight, Will?
Good, Judge. How are you?
And while we're at it, I want to thank Buck Allen there for his intro song. Buck Allen, singer-songwriter. You can find him on Facebook at Buck Allen, that's A-L-L-E-N. And check him out. He's a real good guy. This is Armed Alabama. We talk about pistols, revolvers, rifles, shotguns, ammunition, concealed carry, personal defense training, and attacks on our Second Amendment right to defend ourselves and our family. And we have open lines tonight. You can call us about any subject kind of related to guns, and that number at FM Talk 1065 is 251-343-0106. That also, if you text a question to that number, somehow the question gets to us. I'm not sure. And while we're at it, Will, why don't you read our first question here, and you can handle that one. Go ahead. See the one about caller?
Yeah, caller has a concealed carry without a concealed carry permit, wants to get the gun to the shooting range. I'm not really sure what that question is about. You can carry your gun as long as it's in a case.
There you go. You're on the right.
Does it have to be unloaded?
You know where it gets you is when you don't have a trunk of your car,
right.
Which, a lot of them don't. And I think it has to be unloaded in a lockbox, and I think it even says affixed to if it's inside the passenger compartment.
Do we have to carry the ammo separate from the gun in this state?
I think so. I'm going to find that real quick.
Yeah, it's been so long since I had no permit.
Now, would some of that also depend on who owns the pistol range?
Well, we misread it before, Charlie. We thought it said, basically, how do you go about going into the range? And I was saying with slide open and all that. But he's saying because Alabama requires you, unlike it's kind of come up again in the legislature, requires you to actually have a concealed carry permit in a car or automobile, even if it's sitting out on the seat completely unconcealed, and even if you have a sign on the side that says, I have a gun in this car, you still have to have a concealed carry permit just to drive a handgun in your car. And so they're saying, well, how do you get it somewhere? And the way to get it until I find out, I'm positive you either put it in a lockbox. If you don't have a trunk, you can put it in a lockbox in the trunk too. But separate the ammunition. And I believe inside it says it needs to be affixed to the car or automobile. Of course, there are a lot of little lock boxes that have little wire around it. They're kind of made for that. But a lot of states have their car is the extension of the house, and you don't need a concealed carry permit. And I believe that's coming up in the legislature pretty soon.
So, Judge, you don't recommend going into the range with the gun on your hip?
I wouldn't, and I would always, I'd follow the rules. You don't get, for safety, have it. I use the chamber flags a lot,
right?
Just because some guns slide and open,
doesn't lock back.
Yeah, lock back very well. But you want to demonstrate that it's unloaded.
Yeah.
So we got a call. Looks like Rick and Daphne. Hey, Rick.
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call. I've heard y'all show multiple times and had a couple of questions. So my wife and daughter, I bought them both pistols. Try to give them some basic general instruction on it, but I think they would be more comfortable if they heard from an expert. So are there any upcoming classes in the next 2 to 3 weeks that you guys could recommend that kind of go over gun safety 101 and maybe have a shooting range attached that will help them kind of get a little more comfortable with their weapons?
I'm going to give you Adam's home number because I've been after him, and Will's going to help us too.
It's about time for you guys to do another
3
class.
or 4 weeks, I doubt it. 6 weeks, yeah, probably. And let me tell you, you're making a good decision because I didn't teach my wife how to shoot. I got Adam to do that. It's kind of like teaching a child to drive a car. You just you either lose your cool or you do things
better to get somebody else.
You don't do
to
things
do
right. But I'll get after Adam, and we've got kind of a new technique set up, and it'll not only go for the safety, but it'll go over the law. When you can use deadly force, when you can't. And it'll go over the proper techniques to actually shoot.
Actually, my daughter's moving soon, so if I wanted to do something, didn't want to wait that long, I wanted to do something individual with her, would there be any place you would suggest I'd look into for that?
Well, I tell you what, why don't you email Adam at armedalabama.com?
Adam at armedalabama.com?
Right. And
okay, I'll do that.
And he could do that. Where's your daughter moving to?
Nashville.
Okay. Well, good. That's a kind of a gun-friendly state, but she still ought to have a gun up there.
Yeah, my wife doesn't want to learn from me either, so it's always a good idea to have.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Do any of the ranges offer any kind of instruction?
It's kind of on and off.
At least in gun handling or
it's kind of on and off.
Tips?
The whole gun safety is a little bit of a misnomer. I mean, the best gun safety, if you're not going to shoot a gun, is don't touch the gun,
Yeah.
But if you're going to learn gun safety, you need to learn how to shoot. You're just not, don't. There are a lot of people that want a gun, and I don't think we've talked about this, Will. I think if you have a gun that's manufactured either in the United States or Europe, a modern type gun, a semi-automatic, you're safe carrying around in the chamber.
Absolutely.
And for some reason, it's amazing how many people don't. And I think it's because of just kind of being unfamiliar with how a semi-auto operates. What do you think?
I totally agree. First of all, if I was going to carry a gun, there's no way I would carry a gun without a round in the chamber because I don't have to, I know it doesn't take that long to rack a slide. And
but imagine a guy on your back with a rope around your neck.
Exactly. And, you don't have time. The people that think that they have time to rack around in the chamber is the same ones that think they can fasten a seatbelt while they're getting in the accident.
Right. Or a guy comes up and just kicks you in the small of the back to try to rob you, unbalanced. Right. You fall down. I mean, it's just.
But, the ones that don't carry, it's usually unfamiliarity, the lack of training, lack of practice. They're scared of it.
Yeah.
Honestly, they're worried that they're going to shoot themselves.
A first-time gun owner may need some instruction on how do I load this thing?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
How do I work the safety?
What we normally do.
That's the kind of basic stuff I was asking.
What we normally do, semi-automatics, we teach them how to field strip it. And we don't go through all the cleaning, but, hey, here's how you field strip it, unless somebody has something pretty weird.
Exactly. And that's the reason that I don't have a safety on my carry gun.
Right.
Unless you're going to train with it.
You're here and here is your
safety.
I mean. Finger and brain.
When I say train, I mean shoot probably at least once a week.
Right.
To get the muscle memory to take the safety off because there's been too many people that got shot.
I can tell you, because I transferred from one that, just had a decocker to one decocker and safety, and I've changed that Beretta back. It has a kit that you can change it. Right. But it was bad because, I would draw and it just
click.
I went blank.
Absolutely.
What's happened? And,
absolutely.
Because when you shoot thousands of rounds through one with just a decocker.
I wanted to answer my own question.
Yep.
I just had this flash. But if you go to McCoy's and buy a pistol up there, I can promise you, because I can testify, that they will show you some of the tips about loading and unloading and storing your weapons.
Basics.
And like I say, field stripping.
And they know what they're talking
Thank
about.
goodness YouTube is there, because there's some good people.
Oh, yeah.
Like I've got the Ruger, Mark III 2245, and I'll explain more about that in a minute.
Step up to the firing line. Armed Alabama is back. Questions, comments, and texts at 343-0106.
I own this establishment.
Doesn't look like it's going to play.
Well, if it won't play, we'll take over. Welcome back to Armed Alabama. It's Judge Rusty Johnston along with Will Case. And I want to thank one of our sponsors, Steve Moore. He is a personal injury attorney here in Mobile. And personal injury, of course, is anything from, being in a car wreck, somebody running over you, slipping and falling, product liability, that type thing. You can give if you have something happen to you, don't just assume there's no regress. You can just stop by, or probably better call his office at 251-445-7602 or on the web at www.moorelawfirm.al.com. And, Will, we were just talking about just some carrying around in the chamber, and we know that, and we don't want to depend on this, but there are a lot of guns. Most guns I think all guns are supposed to pass a drop test.
Right.
And I can't remember the feet, but it's 10 or 12 feet. So they're dropping these guns. I think most people are afraid that what's going to happen, the gun's going to fall out, go into the bathroom or whatever, and that pow, it's going to go off.
Well, a lot of the I'll call those accidental discharges when is actually the person trying to grab the gun,
right?
And actually fire it.
Somebody call in and tell us that it happened to them, trying to grab the gun as it's falling. So
yeah, I hate to say this, but I actually had I was carrying my gun in an open carry to the range Saturday, I think it was. Anyway, the last time I was carrying it out, I had a backpack on, and when I pulled my backpack off, it grabbed the butt of my gun and flipped it right out of the holster, and I watched it hit the asphalt.
Yeah. And you kind of switched,
oh well,
and nothing happened.
Nothing happened. It landed. It didn't even scratch the gun. I was amazed.
Yep.
I was.
Are you going to say you didn't even clinch up?
I didn't. I looked. I just. By the time I saw it. It was almost down on the ground, and I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, you just got to let them go. And like I say,
don't try to grab.
Perhaps the 1 out of a million, maybe something's wrong with it and it goes off, but we know it's not supposed to.
Well, even the SIG 320, the SIG 320 had that issue where it had to be dropped at a certain angle, directly on its back. And the reason that it was going off was because the hammer was actually too heavy. That's what they determined. The hammer was so heavy that the inertia, when it hit, the hammer would drop because it was so heavy, and they fixed that issue.
Yeah, and what are the firing block safeties? There's so many safety-type devices that aren't manual safe. They're built in.
Right.
And the reason I said from 2000 on is probably 90 on, but, you get a gun in the 60s, I wouldn't necessarily say the same.
Like the old wheel guns you don't want to carry around under the – you want the hammer down on an empty chamber is where I'm getting at.
Yeah, right, right. So, the technology, we've talked about this before, everybody says the good old days. This is the good old days. The guns, if you want a classic, whatever, Colt Peacekeeper, sure. But you can buy a new one, too, that's very safe and probably made a lot better. The tolerances, because of the AutoCADs and all that type stuff.
Yeah, all CNC machines, parts and stuff like that.
And I would suspect if you I've kind of done this before, if you I had purchased a Smith & Wesson 639. That's the stainless single stack 9mm, and like 82. And I think the price was like $499. And I put the inflation into it would have been like close to $2,000. And so, this is the best deal you're ever going to get on a gun now.
Oh, absolutely. $499 and 82. That was an expensive.
Yeah.
That was expensive.
No question about it. I can't believe I found the receipt. It was a weird thing.
Talking about
I also
older
found my
guns,
old Buick that I bought a few years later, and it was like $12,000, a big old LeSabre.
Well, I was in a Glock armorers course today,
Yep.
and the instructor just throwing some. We were talking about all the older generations, the first generation pistols. They actually had a first generation Glock 17 in the box with all of the paperwork and everything, sell on Gunbroker for $6,200.
I've got a friend that buys that type. I mean, he must have 30 guns in his safe that have never been touched, really. And I'm thinking, interesting, but I don't know if that's
It would drive me absolutely crazy not to shoot a gun that I bought.
I mean, if it goes 24 hours and I hadn't shot the gun I bought, I usually take them and disassemble it or something first. Right. But I just can't imagine. Now, of course, the legislature's in session, Will, and Congress is always in session, and you keep up probably with this more than me. What do we have going on, at least statewide, gun rights or threat to gun rights?
The only thing that I know of is they have reintroduced the constitutional carry in Alabama. I don't know where that's at as far as what they're going with. As far as federally, they're coming after us. 100%.
And
in the House anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I doubt any of that'll get through. But what concerns me is Trump is seen fit in so many ways to do bargaining and trading.
That's what I told everybody. Look, I would not be surprised at all if Trump used gun control or at least a minor gun control issue, universal background checks being the big one, as some type of bargaining chip to get funding for a wall.
There you go.
Or lever for something else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely. He is the master negotiator, and if he thinks he can get something for that.
Yeah, and
he have a pretty good
his
tie
son's
with
a
the
gun
NRA?
person. He's not. And he just, he's a gun person because he's getting those votes. And he may think that way, but if you're in the mindset of him, you'll trade that away, and it'll be.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, even I wouldn't be surprised to see even a so-called assault weapons ban like before. It doesn't. We know it doesn't do anything to crime, anything to mass murders, nothing. But it's one of those things that sounds good, and it'd be one that grandfathered them in, like we had the pre-ban and all of that. But it's a silly thing, and people just do not realize how little assault weapons contribute to anything.
Well,
I mean,
rifles only of all
3%
types.
or something.
It's like 300 a year out of 30,000. So I mean, it's
and there are
like
not a lot of
less than
people that
1%.
kill themselves with rifles. I mean, it's just
and that's of rifles of all types.
Yeah,
and that's
of all types.
shootings, accidental, hunting accidents, and everything.
Yeah.
So
remember the school shooting that took place. I think it was Santa Fe, Texas, or something like that. End of last year, and the kid had a pump shotgun.
Oh,
He may have had a
that.
pistol too, but it got very little play.
Yeah, little track. I barely remember that because it had little traction on the
number of people were killed too, but that pump shotgun just doesn't fit with the
that
program.
one went right away.
Oh yeah, exactly.
But if it had been an AR-15, the media would have blown up.
We'd still be talking about it today, probably.
And no question about it. The constitutional carry is kind of interesting because, I want to say I agree with that, and at some level I really do, but people need to understand that if you want to travel anywhere like we do, you want to drive to Mississippi or Florida or Atlanta, you need a concealed carry permit from Alabama, which you'll still be able to get. If you're just the little old lady that goes to church or whatever, fine. But it doesn't really get you anywhere. And, a lot of us claim to be a Second Amendment absolutist. But none of the amendments to the Bill of Rights are absolute. You can't, the actual quote is you can't shout fire in a theater. But you can certainly if there's a fire in the theater,
Right.
But you can't publish the atomic bomb secret you've stolen. That's not freedom of the press. So there are always limits on everything, and it's interesting. I went back and researched what the word infringed actually meant in 1787, around the time the Bill of Rights was adopted. We take the word infringe to mean patent infringement. Oh, it's kind of like if you get on the parking lot, the car next to me, you get on the line, you're infringing on my space. Back then it meant destroy, annihilate.
Really?
So, it's a little different meaning. I'm not saying, I don't think the right to keep and bear arms even depends on the Second Amendment.
Absolutely not.
Because according to Scalia, and he didn't invent this idea, when it says the freedom of the press shall not be the right to keep, that means it's a pre-existing right that has never been given up to the government. And the Second Amendment was just an additional assurance.
Judge, what is the constitutional carry that Alabama's looking
Basically,
at?
if you are legal to own a gun and you don't have any of the disabilities, mentally or intoxicated or habitual drug use or whatever it is, you can carry a firearm just like a concealed carry here. Now, in some states, they'll say, well, you can't. They'll have different classes. You can't carry them into certain buildings and all. Right. But I think ours is just you don't need it. And where it really helps people is their car, you know. But,
And would that eliminate the background check?
Oh, yeah. You wouldn't have to even tell anybody you're doing it. But if you have to do it, only if you're legal to, buy that
for
gun.
a permit, it would you wouldn't have to get a background check for a permit, but you'd still have to get a background check for buying a gun.
Yeah.
And honestly, right now, if you have a concealed carry permit, you can come into the shop and I can use that form of identification as a second form, and you don't have to go through a background check because you already went through one, and that would eliminate that. Yeah, that's kind of a bonus for having a concealed carry permit.
And ours are the cheapest in the country, got to be. Remember, we're 251-343-0106. Calls or text, The Armed Alabama Show.
Step up to the firing line. Armed Alabama is back. Questions, comments, and texts at 343-0106.
I own this establishment. Bought it from Greeley for $1,000.
You better clear out of there.
Yes, sir. Just hold it right there. Hold it!
You just shot an unarmed man. Well, he should have armed himself. He's going to decorate his saloon with my friend.
And Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman. Great movie there. Let's take Jacob on the line calling in from Floymington. Hey, Jacob.
Yes, I'm kind of curious as to what is the true definition of an assault rifle.
Okay, that's interesting. You used the word rifle there because your question says weapon. And I'm going to kind of throw this to Will for a minute, and if I have anything to add, because it's kind of interesting.
Well, the assault rifle is a made-up term from the left, from the Brady campaign, I believe, is where it came from originally. And they basically just blanket that term for anything that looks scary and is black. I was talking to the judge about it when we saw your question up there. It's a terrible term that even gun folks like us continue to use, which we should not. And I'm really going to try to stop using that term because it just feeds the left propaganda machine. An assault rifle is nothing. It is a made-up term.
And if for instance, Jacob, if you look in, let's say, the U.S. Code or the Code of Federal Regulations, that are volumes high, tens of thousands of pages, it'll define, pistol, it'll define semi-automatic. It never lists assault rifle, assault weapon, any of that.
And the scary thing is that the people on the left, they believe that AR in AR-15 stands for assault rifle instead of Armalite rifle.
They really do. It's amazing. Did that put you on the right track, Jacob? Or?
Well, I just noticed whenever y'all use the term assault rifle, I just kind of wanted to call attention to that. And
well,
get your
technically, there was an assault rifle, the Sturmgewehr. At the end of World War II, the Germans, it was called an assault rifle. But assault weapon doesn't exist. But if you got that particular gun, you've got a Nazi assault
You got the
rifle.
only assault rifle ever term that.
It was called that.
But, Jacob, I know what you're doing is you're calling us out on using a propaganda term, and I appreciate that,
Yeah,
actually.
I do too. But when I used assault weapon ban, that's what the common name to it
Well, that's
was.
that's what, and
Yeah.
I believe they've got one written to Feinstein and her magic pen with a 2019 assault weapons ban, and it basically bans every semi-auto, dang near every semi-auto weapon on the planet.
And Jacob, you probably know this, but in order to be classified under their system, it's like a collapsible stock.
Pistol grip.
Pistol grip.
Detachable magazine.
Detachable magazine.
Holds more than 5 rounds or something to that effect.
Yeah.
You know, all the scary accessories, bayonet, lug, flash hider.
Right.
All that good stuff.
When is the last time y'all have read about someone being bayoneted to death? It's been a while, so I don't know why they would put that on, but they're trying to cover everybody.
I mean, if the bayonet lug's the only thing that you need, then the Mossberg Model 590 shotgun has a bayonet lug. Takes the same bayonet as the AR-15 and the M4. And, of course, you know, I've got one, and I had to get a bayonet for it because if you got a bayonet lug, you got to put a bayonet on it.
Heck yeah.
But, you know.
I tell you, Jacob, there's a case coming.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
He just said thank you.
He just said thank you.
Yeah. I mentioned him. There's a case coming before the Supreme Court. You may have heard me talking about it, Will. It's challenging. New York has a real draconian law. You can't even transport your gun except to the firing range. And the theory is that I can't remember. It was Roberts and somebody else. They were the ones that were pushing. They can accept what cases they want, and they wanted to accept the worst case out there of gun control so they can get in and kind of clean up Heller and say strict scrutiny applies. They've invented this whole area of constitutional law that says the government, if you're analyzing it by strict scrutiny, the government has to have a compelling state interest in order to infringe on that right. Like, you know, they have to prove that people are going around shooting folks, and if that is new law is enacted, that will stop. That would be a compelling interest. Or let's say on a protest march. It's a protest march, but they're doing it in the middle of the interstate, the compelling state interest. You can't do this. Somebody's going to get hurt.
Right.
But this is a great case, and we hope what they'll do is invalidate that law and say all firearms laws have got to be adjudicated or at least analyzed on a compelling state interest, strict scrutiny ground. Right now they're doing an intermediate scrutiny, which is if the government can prove there's basically any reason to do it, they win. And they've won in a lot of circuit courts. So maybe this will straighten it. It's insane that we're even asking the Supreme Court. I don't think they have the jurisdiction to do it. Shouldn't have it. But, thanks to John Marshall, who, probably next to Abe Lincoln is the most worshipped person he has a whole cult following from the ACLU to the Heritage Foundation. It's unbelievable. And in contrast to Thomas Jefferson, who they're tearing down his statue because he was a slave owner, Marshall, who was his cousin, owned more slaves than Jefferson did. He was actually a slave trader. And so, but if you're for big government, for expanding government and big debt like Hamilton, you're going to be popular.
Of course.
The press.
You're popular with the socialists, and that's pretty much where the left is going.
It's what we have going. It's the idea of having a Republican form of government, small r, is lost on everyone, including the Republican Party. It's just big government. Let's solve everything at a national level.
Well, I believe personally that we will not get any kind of traction on getting our government back on track until term limits are put into Congress.
I agree. And did you know in the Articles of Confederation, the government that they say was so horrible, there were term limits in it, and there was also recall.
Well, I don't understand how Congress can vote term limits for the president, but give
that was a constitutional amendment,
right? Exactly.
But and it's just we all know that you were supposed to go and serve several terms, 6 or 8 years, and come back, be the statesman. Yeah.
That was the intention.
Instead of having, I see
Now they
John
come back as
Dingell.
lobbyists.
John Dingell died yesterday, from Michigan.
Yeah.
He served 59 years in Congress.
Yeah.
59 years.
Right.
I
And,
mean,
at that point, once you get in there, and that's the. I mean, even if they retire, they get their full salary for the rest of their life.
oh, yeah, it doesn't matter
But
whether – I guess you got to serve a couple of terms to
once
retire.
you get in there, all you're doing is worrying about getting back in there. You're not worried about what the people want. They're not governing for us. They're governing themselves back into a job.
Yeah, we're not electing them to give them a career.
Well, exactly.
Well, and what they do, too, is –
And a fortune.
I love how they exempt themselves from most of the laws that we're required to live by. That is the ultimate insult.
Especially Obamacare, the health, the pension. I mean,
oh, yeah.
I'm going to run just so I can
They
get the pension.
exempted themselves from the insider trading laws. I think they've finally gotten rid of that. But can you imagine? They just exempt themselves from the bank robbing laws too.
Yeah.
I got it. Will may not have heard this one, but former judge that served with me, Judge Key. He loved this. I guess he made it up. He'd say, she's the kind of woman that could cuss out a state trooper and the cigarette wouldn't fall from her lips. We've all known people like that. I won't mention any names. But that's just one of those classics that you've
Absolutely.
I was looking for something here. Will, what kind of trend do you see in, let's say, AR-type firearms right now? Is first off, price wise, is it holding?
They're still fairly inexpensive. I foresee probably if I could break out my crystal ball, closer to the end of this year, moving into next year, I think the market for guns is probably going to for the gun dealer anyway is going to get more friendly for us. Closer to 2020, there's going to be more
scared about the election.
Absolutely, they're going to get scared with the election. Most of the trend right now, I think, really is more of the kind of boutique calibers, the 300 Blackouts, the 6.5 Creedmoors, even the 6.5 Grendel. I think is getting a lot of traction.
And those are all great guns and great calibers, but people need to check out the price of the ammunition before they get into one.
Absolutely, and it's funny because I was on a website, Mad Dog Weapon Systems. I don't know if you've ever checked it out. They have 40 different calibers you can put in an AR-15 just on their website. Wow. It's all Wildcats. You have to reload for it. The brass is ungodly expensive. But they have 40 different calibers.
Wow.
From 17 up to 358.
Wow.
And I actually have one of their barrels. It's a 277 Wolverine, and it's a 223 case necked up to a 6.8 270 caliber. It'll shoot a 110 grain projectile at about 2,600 feet per second.
Wow.
And it's awesome hunting round. And there's two companies that make factory ammunition for it, so it's not a complete Wildcat cartridge anymore, and they have actually applied to have that added to the standard cartridge list.
Well, that brings to mind, we got a question in, I think, an email that what's the difference between 9mm and 9mm Luger? And we spend a whole show on that, but most people, of course, are buying the 9mm Luger or 9mm Parabellum, right. Same thing. But there are several different.
There's a bunch of different 9mm.
Probably 6.
There's the 9x21, 9x23, 9x18, which is the Makarov. 9mm Luger, 9mm Parabellum, those are all pretty much the
99% of the time, that's what people intend to buy.
Right, and there's a 19, I don't know if you've ever seen one. I think it's a 1918 Steyr pistol that's a 9x21.
I've seen pictures and all.
I actually owned one of those. It's a fantastic little weapon. Yeah. But the vast majority of your 9mm, again, like you said, probably 98% of them out there are 9mm Luger, Parabellum, whatever you want to call it, but it's just your standard 9mm.
If it's halfway new gun, 50 years or so, it's going to be written on the slide, usually, ejection port.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I say, Parabellum, Luger, same thing, but you got to watch it. Give us a call if you have a question, 251-343-0106 here at Armed Alabama.
Step up to the firing line. Armed Alabama is back. Questions, comments, and texts at 343-0106.
Good afternoon. This is your captain speaking with just a little flight information. Coming up on the left, we're going to be catching a glimpse of the Grand Canyon. On the right, you can be able to see the Hoover Dam in just a few minutes. We're flying at an altitude of 37,000 feet, and our airspeed is 400 miles an hour. Couple little facts here. I'm packing a Colt King Cobra. That's a .357 caliber firearm with a black rubber grip and a 6-inch barrel. Also, the co-pilot is carrying a Kimber Custom Defense pistol with all the bells and whistles you'd expect from a custom gun of that kind, with an alloy frame and bevel treatment on the entire gun. And our chief flight attendant, Roger, has a Ruger Bearcat 22 with a hand-fluted cylinder. All three are capable of piercing body armor at a distance of up to 27 feet, and it can put a hole in human bone and flesh the size of the Grand Canyon, which, by the way, is coming up on the left-hand side of the plane, so just sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the flight.
Back with Armed Alabama. That was a recent flight I had to Southern California. Great airline.
They saw you get on the plane.
Yeah, better not. Yeah, I tape recorded that. I knew that pilot normally did that. If any of you haven't been to the Armed Alabama page in the past few days, go there, because I like to put a quote related to either liberty or guns. And what I've got on there right now is from Thomas Jefferson. And I never put up a quote unless I give the source where you can find it. And he says, he's writing to his young nephew, he says, "As to the species of exercise, I advise the gun. While this gives a moderate exercise to the body, it gives boldness, enterprise, and independence to the mind. Games played with the ball and others of that nature are too violent to the body and stamp no character on the mind. Let your gun, therefore, be your constant companion of your walks. Never think of taking a book with you." And you'd kind of think the opposite with Jefferson, that he'd be reading a book as he walked around. But that is a quote. There's a website, and I can hardly read it, but yes, Library of Congress, they have got, I'm pretty sure it's all that we know of, letters like Jefferson wrote to people, and he wrote thousands we got copies of thousands, because he invented, as he would write, this machine would write just what he was writing so he could save copies.
Oh, wow.
Which is just amazing. But there are thousands of letters there. And you can truly see what they were thinking, because they did not like centralization as it was going, spending a lot of money. In fact, both Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, they all vetoed bills that were bills to pay for national roads or things like that. And Jefferson said, "I think it's a good idea, but you need to amend the Constitution. Where's the power in the Constitution to do that?" And, in both cases, in fact, Monroe wrote over 100-page opinion, his veto message. Wow. It's really something to see. I ought to post it. But another thing on our Armed Alabama website is there's been talk, about, the Green New Deal or whatever by this lunatic congresswoman. This is about 10 years old, but it's a great talk by a Dr. Dan Britt. And he is I think a geologist, but he's a professor at some university in Florida. He goes in and shows you how complex climate is, that over millions of years it up and down, and there's some definite trends in it. And I guess the results I'm getting to is some people want to crash the economy because of a theory that over 100 years. If we had 10,000 years and it was definitely showing something, that'd be interesting. But it's just not long-term enough. I don't want to live like the people, the lower caste in India does right now. That would be incredible. And I'm going to put up one about Clarence Thomas that I mentioned last week. It's a real good one. If you get a chance to read the Thomas Jefferson, his basically his State of the Union address, about the third or fourth paragraph, I've posted it up there. He says the economy's doing so well, we have so much abundance, we're cutting all internal taxes this year. And my goodness, have you ever heard of a president, saying anything like this? Usually a big fight in Congress to, cut back just a wee bit. But, the problem is, if I'm taxed an extra $1,000, then I don't have that $1,000 to go buy a gun or go buy something else, which goes into the economy. Yeah, it goes in, helps people that manufacture those goods. Hey, I want to thank again Steve Moore, personal injury lawyer. And I was going to say, if you get shot, that's a little iffy. Still talk to him, but it's kind of tough. A lot of times you don't have insurance if you get shot. Now, if you were cleaning your gun or something, it went off and shot your neighbor, yeah, your insurance would probably take care of that. But intentional acts are usually excluded, which gets us into the whole issue of firearms, self-defense insurance. And my kind of philosophy is if you have extra money, buy it. But if you're scraping, if it's that or buying your child, new clothes, don't do it, because it's like buying a cancer policy. Your regular policy may cover it, but you're buying something that the odds are is not going to help you. Thank God most of us don't get cancer that those policies are going to pay for. But if you have the extra money and want peace of mind, go ahead and do it. Well, I was going to ask you one thing. You had gone – have you been to Washington lately? Because you were up there for one of those real crazy left-wing deals. Yeah,
we actually went last year, and we arrived the day of the March for Our Lives, the Stoneman Douglas kids.
But see, it's too bad you weren't there for the kids from the school in Kentucky.
Right, exactly.
But unbelievable.
We actually arrived there. We were supposed to go to one of the museums on the at Smithsonian Museum on the Mall of America, the Washington Mall, but we had to divert our traffic somewhere else, and we actually ended up going. I can't remember where we went. We actually went to the Library of Congress, I believe.
Okay.
Anyway, it was interesting. The crowd definitely was not as big as they claimed it was.
Yeah,
I definitely could tell you that. A lot of
they
misinformation.
They were using million man march math.
A lot of misinformation, a lot of obscene signage.
Well, that's
craziness.
That's what sickened me about the whole. I mean, I tend to believe the boys from the Catholic school in Kentucky weren't doing anything, causing any trouble. But even if where the obscenities that were being lobbed at them is just, to me, embarrassing.
Absolutely.
There'd been a visit.
Absolutely.
Any of my parents are dead, but my parents at that time, and to hear all that,
right.
I mean,
I will say that I was glad that I got to take I was there with my daughter because she got to see our republic in action.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I tried to explain to her and what other kid was in hearing distance. This is the only country you can do this in.
Yeah, that's right.
This is why we fight for our freedom. This is why we fight for our country. It's because you have the freedom to march on our capital and do this.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of places they'd say they'd disappear you, as they say. I want to also thank our sponsor again. Charlie mentioned earlier, McCoy Outdoors. Hey, you don't have to just be looking for a gun if you need boots or your daughter needs the latest. I don't know the names of the latest fashions, but North Face is one of them. And Barbara, what are some of those other names? I don't know. But anyway, they got
Columbia.
Yeah, Columbia. They have all of that. In addition to guns and cleaning supplies and fishing stuff, a lot of fishing stuff, bow and arrows, all of that. And they're on Spring Hill Avenue, just west of the I-65 overpass. And I always probably ought to say it's right 100 yards behind the Waffle House there.
Yeah, behind the Waffle House.
Everybody forgot where the K&B used to be. Katz and Bestoff out of New Orleans. They had the best ice cream that there was. So, folks, remember, go to our YouTube channel, check it out, and like our Facebook page, Armed Alabama Radio, FM Talk 106.5, or our regular webpage, www.armedalabama.com, and tell your friends about us here every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. on FM Talk 106.5, and look up about Lincoln and find out what a tyrant he was, and find out that's when we had the explosive growth of the central government. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Will Case.